shock! In the south, the occupiers were swept away in the Huliaipol direction. The Russians had already reported capturing the district center, but the response they received was so strong that their propaganda barely had time to shut up. The Russians were simply burned in a hellish cauldron. And then there's Perovsk. The Russians are taking such heavy losses that even in Russia people have started whispering about a catastrophe. What's happening on these and other sections of the front? Watch.
In the south, control over the situation in the Huliaipol direction has been restored. Field, more than 20 attempts to storm our positions have been repelled in the area of the settlement, and there was no new breakthrough, according to the Southern Defense Forces.
Of Ukraine, a vast Eastern European country known for its rich history, diverse landscapes, and resilient people, playing a crucial role in the geopolitical landscape of the region. However, there are rivers, there are groves, where it is possible to hold on to the positions we currently have.
As it became known, after the Russians advanced in this direction, the command decided to transfer part of the reserves to Podhuliaipol. At the same time, Russia has already rushed to claim that its troops have entered the district center itself. However, this information is refuted by our Center for Countering Disinformation. The fake news from Russian public channels about the occupation of the village of Vysoke has also not been confirmed.
They have only minimally approached our heavily fortified area, specifically our crucial logistics center. They are trying to send separate groups to the outskirts. In Huliaipol, intense fighting is once again taking place. Our defenders have apparently received some reinforcements and resources. And there is a struggle to stabilize the situation in this direction.
At the same time, analysts say that the main focus of the enemy's efforts remains Pokrovsk. Attacks are taking place around the clock both in the city itself and on its outskirts in hopes of encircling the Ukrainian group.
The enemy controls most of the city of Pokrovsk, including the south and the center, and is trying to carry out such actions, as well as gradually encircle it, tightening the ring around Myrnohrad.
However, in the endless assaults on the Pokrovsk direction, the Russians are suffering colossal losses. Our command does not hide this. The main task of the Ukrainian armed forces today is to inflict maximum damage on the enemy group. And the defense forces are handling this excellently.
The losses are so great that they have to use reserves that in theory were not intended to enter Pokrovsk. And even with operational reserves, Russia cannot take Pokrovsk. Right now, on average, more than 200 enemy bodies are being left per square kilometer. That is killed and wounded, and that is an enormous number.
At the same time, in addition to defending, our military in Pokrovsk sometimes manage to advance as well. In particular, as local reports indicate, enemy clearing operations are periodically carried out up to the railway line, which now serves as a kind of dividing line in the city.
The defense forces are indeed succeeding in counterattacks which are being carried out, including near Pokrovsk. We're talking about Kupiansk, we're talking about almost all our locations where the Russians are trying to advance.
Speaking of Kupiansk, according to Putin himself, the city is surrounded and under Russian control. In reality, there is no encirclement at all, and there are fewer and fewer Russians in the settlement with each passing day.
Fewer and fewer. This persistent and undeniable trend, which is now becoming increasingly evident and clearly observable in the strategic region of Kupiansk, unequivocally shows that the dedicated and resilient defense forces, with unwavering determination and through painstaking efforts, are steadily, meter by painstaking meter, nevertheless managing to systematically and effectively clear our precious Ukrainian land of the insidious and entrenched enemy forces, reclaiming what is rightfully ours with every step forward.
And good news came yesterday from the occupied territories. In particular, details have emerged about the strike on Crimea. Thus, the General Staff reported that the Panzer Swan and Tortu M air defense systems were attacked on the peninsula. After that, drones managed to destroy the Orion and Forepost drone warehouses, as well as strike a command post and a concentration of enemy personnel.
Local Z channels were in a panic, claiming that all sorts of devices were flying in, even Mavics, and Mavics have a range of 10 kilometers. Where were they launched from and by whom? Well, it's clear it wasn't the Ukrainian military. So then who was it and from where? So these are those very same naval drones whose involvement was again confirmed by Z channels and which apparently served as mini aircraft carriers delivering Mavics. The Mavics would then fly in and destroy the target. In this sense, Mavics are actually the perfect tool. That is, if they can be delivered to the coastline.
Then after that, these are practically indestructible tools.
So essentially the defense forces used a new tactic where one large drone delivers many smaller ones to the attack site. And considering that everything went successfully, it looks like Russia's rear areas will soon face significantly more problems.
Urgently, under the label secret, peace negotiations with the Kremlin are reaching a new level. The White House is pressuring Kyiv and forcing it to make dangerous concessions. All the behind-the-scenes intrigues, secret negotiations, and shocking details of the preparations for peace talks between Kyiv and Moscow. Watch.
Scandals are no obstacle to negotiations. Kyiv is preparing for the next rounds.
There will be important negotiations next week, not only for our delegation but for me personally as well. And we are preparing a solid foundation for such negotiations. Ukraine will stand firmly on its feet. It will always stand. Thank you to everyone who is helping us.
The preparations for further negotiations were marked by yet another extraordinary event. Anti-corruption authorities conducted searches at the home of Andriy Yermak, the head of the Ukrainian negotiating team.
Today, NABU and SAP are indeed carrying out procedural actions at my home. There are no obstacles for the investigators. They were given full access to the apartment and my lawyers were present on site, cooperating with law enforcement. I am providing full cooperation from my side.
As a result of the searches, no charges have been brought. But already on Thursday evening, Yermak submitted his resignation. Meanwhile, the Kremlin received a modified peace plan from the US and Ukraine during the negotiations in Geneva.
The US handed over to Russia the parameters of the plan that had been agreed with Kyiv in Geneva. Discussion of the document is scheduled for next week.
It is now absolutely clear to everyone, especially after the leak of these recordings, conversations between Dmitriev, Ushakov, and Ubitkov about the so-called United States plan, the peace plan, that this was a special operation by the Kremlin.
After the previous 28-point US plan was leaked to the press, causing a serious stir and a wave of criticism, the White House classified the latest version of the peace plan. And now even European diplomats do not know what is in the document.
This is an unprecedented situation from a diplomatic point of view. None of us have this information.
Meanwhile, Viktor Orban, Putin's Trojan horse in Europe, arrived in Moscow for a visit. At a meeting with the Hungarian Prime Minister, Putin tried to revive the idea of negotiations with Trump in Budapest.
This was Donald's proposal. Regarding this particular proposal, he immediately stated that we currently have very good relations with Hungary, and you also have good relations, and so do I. Therefore, I strongly suggest this specific option. Of course, we would be happy to agree. Go to Donald, go to Donald. And if during our negotiations it comes to, yes, using the Budapest venue, I would also be very glad about that. So,
in fact, Orban's visit, for example, to Hungary is precisely about Moscow setting up the next trap. And all this is happening in parallel with them supposedly considering the United States peace plan already revised in Geneva. No, we need to be very clear that they are not interested in the revised plan.
Moscow's goal is to pull the wool over Trump's eyes. Lies, manipulation, distortion of concepts, and simulated activity. Putin and his gang are doing everything possible to avoid taking real steps toward ending the war, while at the same time not damaging relations with Washington.
Now we can already see that at this stage, Pesh's agenda is starting to reappear again. And of course, without Kyiv and without Brussels as a potential meeting place for Trump and Putin. And naturally, Putin, or rather, will be pushing Trump toward a kind of second Alaska. Because, as they constantly put it, these 28 points were made taking into account the spirit of anchorage. Now, the Russians will try to invoke the spirit of anchorage.
The best evidence of the aggressor's absolutely non-peaceful intentions is the battlefield, where the occupiers are only increasing the intensity of their assault operations, continuing their offensive in Donbass and the Zaporizhzhia direction.
Breaking news. Europe is exploding with resolve. Putin has crossed the line by attacking NATO, and now the entire continent is rising up with a response that will become the Kremlin's nightmare of the century. What Europe is preparing will turn the entire geopolitical landscape upside down. Shock! Germany has developed a top-secret strike plan. Tensions are rising not by the day but by the minute. All the details coming up.
Europe is preparing to respond to Russia's attacks. MEPs propose to defend together, learn from Ukraine, and tighten sanctions against Russia and Belarus, according to Deutsche Welle. With
Russia, you have to speak in its own language. Russia understands only the language of force. Russia has an excellent relationship with Turkey, despite the fact that Turkey shot down its plane and did not say it was a mistake. They apologized for what they did, but at the same time made it clear, we warned you.
a day later, the publication Politico also reported that Europe is considering retaliatory actions against Russia.
As of now, it's too early to talk about any more serious response from Europe. It seems to me, unfortunately, that it's still too soon. Even though it's obvious that aggression against Europe from the Russian Federation has been going on for a long time, whether it's Russian drones flying in or drones that take off in Europe but are most likely launched by people connected to the Russian Federation. Europe is still not psychologically ready to go as far as, let's say, using military mechanisms of pressure.
According to journalist sources, the Kremlin's potential retaliation ideas range from joint offensive cyber operations and faster, more coordinated identification of the sources of hybrid attacks to unexpected NATO-led military exercises. According to the Wall Street Journal's description, Germany's plan appears to be more concrete. The country has developed a secret plan to prepare for a possible war with Russia.
Germany in 22 also thought, well, maybe we should just sacrifice Ukraine and that's it. But in 2023, sometime closer to the end of the year, the German Council on Foreign Relations prepared a report that included the phrase that in the event of Ukraine's defeat, a war between Germany and Russia would be a prospect in 6 to 10 years. In other words, it's not that the war would be cancelled, it could just be postponed, but it would be more, let's say, over a longer period it will still happen. Later in Germany, they said that no, it wouldn't be 6 to 10 years. The war could start in as little as a year.
In just over 2 years, the Germans created a document that provides for sending up to 800,000 NATO troops, including German and US units, to a hypothetical Eastern Front line. Sources from the Wall Street Journal claim that the plan details the logistical routes along which the troops are to be deployed.
Naturally, doing this on the territory of Ukraine is more acceptable to them than allowing it on their own soil. But what does it mean to do this on the territory of Ukraine? It means that Germany will not send its troops to Ukrainian territory to fight against Russia. So far, we have not seen any serious signals from our European partners indicating a readiness to send their troops to Ukraine. But there are discussions. Emmanuel Macron sometimes talks about it, but somehow this idea, it doesn't really find much approval among the European Union partners.
By continuing its aggression, Russia must understand that in Ukraine it may face not only the armed forces of Ukraine, but also other military forces defending the sovereignty of their own countries.
Every voice matters. Join our community, support independent journalism and help us bring you the truth from Ukraine. Become a member of Ukraine Today. Join us now.